We begin this morning with a Fox News alert. President Trump kicking off his first full day at the G7 summit, meeting top Middle East leaders.
Just moments ago, the president arrived for a working session with G7 leaders as well as President Zelensky. Later this morning, he will meet with the Emir of Qatar and the president of the UAE. And this comes on the heels of him securing a peace deal with Iran, which includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz and limiting Tehran's nuclear power. But the White House is also warning Iran to be on their best behavior or face the wrath of the U.S. military.
And while Democrats like former President Obama try to downplay this deal, Vice President Vance says it's better than the 2015 version.
And I'd ask the president, the former president, I'd say, Obama, why in the world, if it's the same thing, why is it that the Gulf Arabs hated your deal and they love our deal? They are the ones who are in the region. They know what it means to enrich the worst terrorist regime in the world, and they also know what it means to turn over a new leaf and to go to a different future. So I think President Obama, he should acknowledge that the people who are closest to this, they love the Trump deal. They hate the Obama deal.
And here we go. You're watching Fox and Friends. First special 4 a.m. edition here on your Tuesday. I'm Todd Pyron.
And I'm Carly Shimkus. Trey Yanks is live in Tel Aviv as the Middle East reacts to this memorandum of understanding with Iran. But we begin with Aishah Hasnie, who is with the president at the G7 summit in France. Hi, Aishah. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Todd and Carly. From one conflict to another, the president is going to be talking about the Russia war on Ukraine. He is in the room right now with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other G7 leaders. It's a working session. They're going to talk about the war. And the president, maybe because of the momentum of the Iran deal with the wind at his back, is feeling pretty optimistic about the Ukraine war coming to an end. He said that maybe we can do something. We'll see. We're following these talks very closely. He's got a busy agenda today. Yesterday, though, the president declared the core objective of the conflict in Iran had been achieved, which is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. They've agreed to that, he says. But no one has seen the text of the memorandum of understanding as of yet, which the vice president says is apparently only a page and a half of a general document. The president says, though, it will be released soon.
I think pretty soon. I would say, I want it to be released because it's a very powerful document. It's not like the Obama document, which was just a terrible document. This is a very powerful document, and I want it to be released. So probably pretty soon. I would say sometime after Friday, because the strait opens completely. It's open now, but it opens completely.
The president also pouring cold water on a lot of talk and questions over this $300 billion reconstruction fund that Iran supposedly gets as part of this agreement. He called it fake news yesterday, and it comes after a U.S. official told reporters that the two sides discussed the possibility of such a fund tied to performance of Iran, as it would be performance-based. The vice president seemed to confirm it during an interview Monday morning, saying that it would be funded by the Gulf Coast Coalition so long as the Iranians upheld their end of the bargain. And here is the VP on Hannity last night.
They never get a dime of American taxpayer money, ever. Full stop. Not even close. Okay. What we have said is there's a lot of economic benefit in the United States relieving a lot of sanctions and welcoming them back into the world economy. There's a lot of benefit there. Not American money, but there's a lot of economic prosperity that can flow from that.
And like I said, the president has a very packed day today, so he'll be in this meeting with Zelensky and the G7 leaders, and then he'll have a one-on-one meeting with the the Emir of Qatar. He will have a bilateral with him. Qatar, of course, is getting a lot of credit for seeing this deal across the finish line, as are the Pakistanis. The Qataris are not part of the Abraham Accords, so the Iranians trusted them to be mediators in all of this a lot more than others. Carly, Todd.
And we will be breaking all of that down over the course of the next 2 hours. Aishah Hasnie, thanks for kicking us off. We appreciate it. Meantime, let's bring in national security and military analyst and international relations expert, Dr. Rebecca Grant. Dr. Grant, let's start with Ukraine. In the 4+ years now since the war has begun, and that number is massive. We've had multiple summits, multiple meetings, bilats, you name it, and yet the war rages on. What could be different this time?
Well, here we go. Ukraine zooms to the top of Trump's agenda. And what is different is Ukraine's long-range drone strikes on a wide variety of targets across Russia, oil fields, air bases, and other targets. Now, these are a lot of drones that Ukraine has made themselves. They don't have the biggest warheads, but they've been able to do a lot of damage, really hurting Russian oil production back earlier this spring. And this puts a lot of pressure on Putin. So Ukraine is pressuring Russia in a way we haven't seen before, and Russia's advances on the battlefield have slowed. Ukraine is really holding them. Putin will never have the victory he wanted. He can't even take the rest of the Donbass. And you're looking at about 500,000 Russian war dead, more wounded. This is incredible pressure. And Trump may have a moment to increase the pressure on Putin to agree to a ceasefire.
Well, this is a big day ahead with a whole lot going on, from talks with Ukraine to Iran. There'll be China discussions as well as discussions over artificial intelligence. What are some of the most important things that the president can accomplish at this G7 summit overall?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned AI, because this is really crucial. You know, we're in a race to stay ahead of China. Europe's not as strong in AI, but they sure have a lot of regulations that hurt our best and biggest tech companies. And Trump very much wants to see some of that moved off. There was also some discussions about AI safety, but really this issue of staying ahead of China in the AI races is quite essential. I think Ukraine obviously will come up too. You know, the EU is supposed to begin the process of accepting Ukraine and Moldova. And there you've got in the G7 the key power players who can move that along. Obviously, of course, they'll also be talking about Iran and that situation. And don't forget, there is a trade deal that was set up last year, and it's got to be finalized soon. So that is also going to be part of the discussion to make sure the tariffs stay where they are now.
I'm glad we dealt China into this discussion. How do you see China, Russia as well, reacting to the G7 overall? Specifically, President Trump, to your point at the outset, saying, Ukraine now at the top of my list, now that we have a deal, or at least a memorandum of understanding for a deal in place on Iran. How do you see those two countries reacting? One, a country that literally is in the war in Russia, and two, our number one adversary in China.
Well, this G7 so beautifully set up in France with the world leaders, a lot of great visuals, and that is a direct message to China that the U.S. is still the world leader, and that these countries that comprise the G7, this is the heart of the world economy, of the rules-based order. Remember, Putin and Russia used to be a member until they invaded in Crimea, and they got thrown out. So I think it's also a clear message to Russia. Russia increasingly dependent on China, not just for oil purchases, but for their electronics, their e-commerce, such integration of those two economies. But the real power players are still here in the G7, led, of course, by the U.S. and President Trump.
Yeah, and thinking about the participants in this G7 summit, the president has, outside of the leader of Japan, tangled with just about all of them, whether it's over their reaction to the war in Iran or what the president views as mismanagement of a trade relationship between their country and the United States. So you have to wonder how these discussions will go today, what the tone and the mood will be between President Trump and these other leaders.
Yeah, he's been pretty ticked off at Britain and France and Germany all in sequence. But, you know, he's expressed that, he's had that out. I think that now that this Iran MOU is very close and that he is turning towards the issue of Ukraine and Russia again, I think Trump is going to be magnanimous. Now, he'll still call them out. We're still expecting many of these countries to increase their defense spending. But he realizes, too, that the Russian threat and their militarization has really freaked out Europe. There's a lot of gray zone, cyber, and other type of conflict going on that Russia is generating into the European sphere. And this is something where we need this group and NATO to hold together firmly. And I got to say, Japan's prime minister, she has been amazing in standing up to China and getting Japan more ready to face that threat. What a great ally she is.
But despite that, Rebecca, there seems to be concern among the European leaders that when push comes to shove, President Trump is going to pressure Ukraine into territorial concessions in order to push forward a ceasefire, in order to end that war. Do you share those concerns?
We know from previous discussions that territorial concessions are certainly on the table. You know, we think that President Trump wants Zelensky to be ready to take a territorial concession, leaving some Russians in place. I don't want to see a single Russian on any Ukrainian territory, to include Crimea, but that is where we left the discussions last. Now, with Ukraine's battlefield momentum, perhaps that can change, but the idea is take the good part of Ukraine that you've got, give them a solid economic future, EU integration, U.S. security guarantees, the minerals deal, remember all that, and give a Ukraine a viable future going forward. That is President Trump's #1 priority.
Well, it is 10 o'clock in the morning in France. The president's going to be in and out of meetings all day, and we're going to be covering it all. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Rebecca Grant, we appreciate you as always.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.